As the sun lifted its golden face over the sleeping hills, the village of Mbalo slowly emerged from the embrace of dawn. The soil here was not brown but red, so red it looked like spilled blood, and some said it was. Baobab trees, ancient and gnarled, stood like guardians of memory. Round mud huts huddled together for warmth as thin streams of smoke climbed lazily into the pale sky. It was quiet. Too quiet. No birds. No laughter. The air was heavy, as if holding its breath. Something forgotten was beginning to stir beneath the surface of this land. Lumo was different. He never ran with the other boys, never chased goats, never shouted at the sky. He was a listener. A watcher. A quiet boy whose eyes saw more than they should. Raised by a blind grandmother, Lumo had grown up with stories instead of toys, and silence instead of siblings. The villagers whispered that he could hear the wind thinking. That he dreamed of rivers that flowed backward and trees that wept. This morning, as dust curled through the roots of the fig tree, Lumo's hand moved instinctively, drawing shapes older than memory. Something ancient was calling his name. Far beyond the edge of Mbalo, where children were forbidden to wander and hunters dared not tread, stood the forgotten shrine. It had once been the spiritual heart of the village, but now it was overrun by vines, its stones cracked and weeping moss. No one remembered who built it. No one spoke its name. And in its silent center sat the drum, massive, weathered, wrapped in lion hide hardened by time. Its surface was dry and cracked, but still alive. The ancestors had sealed it long ago, fearing what it might remember. But it had waited. And now, it had begun to listen. Drawn by whispers no one else could hear, Lumo stepped through the arch of thorns and stone. Each step felt like it echoed through time. The air was heavy, thick with dust and memory. The drum stood waiting, untouched, forgotten, yet alive. As he approached, the wind stilled. The birds fell silent. His heart pounded in his ears, louder than any sound in the world. When his fingers brushed the drum's skin, warmth surged through his hand. And then, it beat. Not with his touch, but on its own. A deep, thunderous sound that shook the very bones of the earth. The drum remembered. The moment the drum awakened, the world shifted. Light changed. The air thickened. And one by one, they appeared, figures woven from dust and memory. The ancestors. Their faces were both familiar and terrifying. Some wept. Some stared with empty eyes. Each one carried the marks of time, scars, feathers, beads glowing faintly with forgotten magic. They did not speak, but Lumo felt their questions, their grief, their rage. The drum between them throbbed with soundless beats. He wasn't just a boy anymore. He was a vessel. The Seer had chosen him. And the past had returned to ask why it had been buried. Word spread like wildfire. The boy had touched the drum. The drum had answered. And now, the elders, keepers of silence, gathered to debate the impossible. They wore white robes and heavy necklaces of bone and copper. Their voices rose in angry chants, not because they didn't believe, but because they did. The Seer's prophecy had returned. Baba Chuma, the oldest among them, pointed a trembling finger. He walks with the memory of fire, he said. But Mama Ora, still as stone, whispered just 4 words, the land has spoken. That night, the village held its breath. No laughter. No dancing. Just fear and wonder. Lumo sat by the sacred fire, drum in hand, eyes glowing with starlight. When he played, the flames bent toward him, twisting and pulsing like serpents. The rhythm was old, older than Mbalo. The smoke rose and shaped itself into memories, faces of those long dead. Children cried. Elders fell to their knees. Even the trees leaned in. The ancestors were not gone. They had only been waiting to be heard again. And now, through the boy, they spoke. At dawn, the earth cracked. Not with violence, but with revelation. A shimmering white structure rose from the ground, a tree, not of wood, but of bone and crystal, its roots curled like claws. Lumo stood at its base, silent, listening. Beneath his feet, the soil hummed with sound, like a buried chant. The villagers watched from afar, too afraid to approach. This was not a curse. It was memory, pushing itself up from the dirt, demanding to be seen. Lumo understood now. The land was not cursed. It was forgotten. And the drum would remind them. Lumo descended into the bones of the earth. The cavern was no ordinary space, it was a library of spirit. Murals danced on the walls, telling stories of betrayal, sacrifice, and prophecy. Symbols floated in the air like fireflies. The walls themselves sang, low and haunting. As he walked, the memories clung to him, etched into his skin. Every step was a revelation. Every breath, a history. He wasn't just learning the past, he was becoming part of it. This place had waited for him. And now, the knowledge of generations whispered in his bones. The sky opened, not with rain, but with ash. It fell like snow over Mbalo as the world turned crimson. Lumo stood alone in the center, beating the drum with all the pain and memory of 100 years. Around him, villagers wept, not from fear, but from recognition. The seer had returned. She rose from the earth in a swirl of smoke and red cloth, her form glowing, her voice a song only the land could understand. She had not died. She had become the land. And now, through Lumo, she had returned to finish her story. Lumo drifted between worlds, his spirit detached from his body, carried by the rhythm of the drum. Below him lay a battlefield not of war, but of betrayal. Spears snapped in half. Masks split down the middle. Bones arranged like forgotten prayers. The fog was thick, but through it came a voice, soft, but sharp as glass. Lumo, it called. He turned. She stood in the mist, the seer, wrapped in golden robes, her face both young and ancient. She raised her hand, not in greeting, but in warning. When he opened his eyes, he was surrounded by fire, but it did not burn. The elders lay in a trance, their bodies twitching, their mouths muttering forgotten names. One, the betrayer, screamed as the fire pulled his spirit apart, exposing his guilt to the world. The flames didn't consume flesh, they devoured lies. And in the center, Lumo stood untouched. Symbols etched in glowing light ran down his arms and chest, moving like living tattoos. He was no longer just a boy. He was now the drum's voice. The river had reversed. Its waters crawled back toward their origin, whispering secrets they had carried away for decades. Ghostly fish, translucent and pale, jumped against the current. Lumo stood at the bank, his feet submerged, the drum pressing into his spine. Above him, the moon fractured across the water's surface, resembling a cracked mask. He knelt, dipped his hands into the river, and heard a song that had not been sung in 70 years, the last lullaby of the seer. Mama Aura sat alone, wrapped in silence. She hadn't spoken in days. Then, the drum began to glow faintly, casting warm pulses of red light that painted the walls like firelight. She inhaled sharply. Her white eyes fluttered open, not blind anymore, but staring deep into memory. When she opened her mouth, the voice that emerged was not hers. It was the seer's. Thunderous. Deep. Ancient. The room trembled with every word. The dead were not gone. They had merely gone quiet. Midnight fell like a blanket. No one spoke. One by one, the villagers donned masks carved from baobab bark and painted in charcoal and ochre. Each carried a candle, beeswax mixed with the ash of their ancestors' letters. They moved through Mbalo like shadows. Lumo led them, the drum hanging at his hip. The shrine had been restored, cleaned, reborn. The people were no longer afraid. They remembered. Tonight, they would walk into truth, no matter how sharp its edges. The shrine had awakened. Its walls shimmered with stories long buried. Murals once faded now moved like memories on water. Lumo reached out, pressing his palm to one, and it came alive. A village in chaos. A masked elder raising a blade. The seer, falling, not in fear, but in peace. Her eyes locked on the stars as blood kissed the soil. The crowd behind Lumo gasped. They had seen it now. Truth, undeniable and unforgiving. The lie had lived too long. Justice did not come with swords or fire. It came in whispers and wind. Beneath the fig tree, spirits gathered, elders long dead, floating with eyes like moons. Lumo stood tall, the drum resting against his chest like a judge's gavel. The air was thick with reckoning. One masked elder knelt, weeping. He removed his mask, revealing a face ravaged by guilt and age. I feared her truth, he whispered. And for that, I buried it. The spirits said nothing. But the wind forgave. He struck the drum, slow and steady. With each beat, the air shimmered. The sky turned orange, not with fire, but with rebirth. The red soil, once cracked and dry, began to pulse. From its depths, green sprouted. First moss. Then shoots. Then trees, full and lush, blooming with flowers no one had seen in generations. The villagers watched, mouths open. The land had not needed rain. It had needed memory. From the forest's edge, she returned, Murai, the guide, the wanderer, the blood of the seer. Her red and gold robes shimmered in the light of the new day. In her hand, a staff crowned with an eagle feather. She approached Lumo, bowed deeply, and placed the staff at his feet. You are ready now, she said. And before another word could be spoken, her body dissolved into light, carried upward like smoke. Her task was complete. Lumo was no longer the chosen, he was the path. Years passed. The seasons turned. Lumo, no longer a boy, sat beneath the old baobab tree, the same one that once stood in silence. Now, it bloomed. Around him, children gathered, eyes wide. He held a smaller drum, carved from a tree that grew the day the seer was freed. He told the story, not with fear, but with love. The drum is not for war, he said. It is for remembering. And with a soft beat, he began the song again. The shrine had changed. No longer a tomb of silence, it had become a school of memory. Elders taught. Children listened. Even the birds perched on the walls as drums sang in unison. Not just one drum, but many, all carved with care and respect. Each beat told a different story. Some were joyful. Others mournful. But together, they created something greater, remembrance. And the village thrived. From the sky, Mbalo looked like a heartbeat. The land that once bled red now shimmered with green. Rivers danced through the valley like silver veins. Crops swayed in rhythm with the wind. And in the center, near the shrine, the villagers danced. No longer afraid. No longer divided. The drum still echoed, not with warnings, but with joy. The earth had remembered. And forgiven. The time came to let it rest. Lumo, now a man with gray at his temples, carried the old drum into the shrine one last time. Around him, carvings told its story, every hand it had touched, every soul it had stirred. He placed it gently inside a glass case, kissed its surface, and locked the door. Sleep, he whispered. You've earned it. And the drum pulsed, once, softly. Then silence. The sun set gently over Mbalo, casting golden light over fields now rich with life. Lumo walked slowly toward the hills, a cane carved from fig wood guiding his steps. Behind him, the village sang. Ahead of him, stars blinked awake. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The land remembered now. And that was enough. In the shrine, the drum sat quiet, still, sacred, sealed in memory. A gentle wind slipped through the cracks of the stone, caressing the old lion hide like a lover's hand. And if you stood very still, you might hear it, a whisper, barely a breath. The seer's voice. Tell them we were here. And so, the story goes on.